We're very excited about the new product, OmniPoint, which is a wireless multi-point access control system. It is the preferred option for schools, warehouses, shipping yards, multi-tenant communities, loading docks, regional airports, parking lots, and many other similar properties that have factors that make a wired access control solution cost prohibitive or impossible to install. While OmniPoint can work almost anywhere, it's ideal, cost-effective, and reliable when your property has entry points spread out up to a mile, line of sight not always available, fenced outdoor areas that need to be secured, and a minimum of 5 to 100 entrances.
We realized a couple of years ago that we were really being relegated to the perimeter of the property and not the full property itself. And that was because we didn't have a cost-effective way of managing multiple entry points on the interior of the property.
Cellgate's OmniPoint wireless access control system is the cost-effective and simple to install security solution that gated communities, campuses, and businesses have been waiting for. Most of today's systems require multiple control panels and extensive data wiring to each entry point in a building. Regardless of whether Ethernet or weekend wires are used, distance limitations are often a problem. If a property has multiple buildings, both data wiring and internet would be repeated for each building. With building retrofits, this can be extremely expensive and sometimes virtually impossible. With new construction, it may be easier, but it still requires significant costly infrastructure. Cellgate's OmniPoint works differently. OmniPoint is a point-to-multi-point wireless access control system that can cover a large property without data wires or control panels. It works with any 26-bit Wiegand device and can control door locks, gate operators, and overhead doors, just like wired systems. There are 3 key components to OmniPoint: the hardware, the TrueCloud portal, and the Cellgate app. First, the hardware. Every OmniPoint system utilizes 2 types of hardware: a gateway and the individual entry point modules, or EPMs, for each door. The gateway acts like a hub and spokes. It communicates with Cellgate servers via hardwired Ethernet or cellular LTE on Verizon or AT&T, then with the entry point modules using LoRa technology. LoRa is a worldwide standard utilized in the oil industry, where a reliable, long-range communications network was needed. It has excellent building penetration, and line of sight is not required. With OmniPoint, entrances on a property can be located up to a half mile from the installed gateway, and each gateway will support up to 100 entry points. Many properties will only need a single gateway to control all of their doors. Because it is wireless, no data wires are required upon installation. The only wires needed are for power and local wires to the card reader and lock. OmniPoint's EPMs are the smart devices installed at each entry point. They work with any 26-bit Wiegand device and can store codes with common restrictions at each entrance. The second component of OmniPoint is the TrueCloud portal, hosted on Microsoft Azure. TrueCloud's design allows the integration of Cellgate's multiple technologies into one administrative system, where access control, video intercom, and pictures are all controlled with a single user interface. Administrators can control door access via TrueCloud, creating user credentials with time, date, or day restrictions, setting up alerts, and reviewing historical logs of access attempts. If a previous access control system was in use, most keycards, fobs, and RFID credentials can still be used and imported into TrueCloud. For doors that only need to be monitored, a low-cost battery-powered sensor is available, so an alert can be sent if a door has been propped open or is unlocked. The third component of OmniPoint is the Cellgate app. Doors can be controlled and monitored on the Cellgate app, allowing real-time access to OmniPoint from anywhere. With Cellgate's OmniPoint wireless technology, you can now secure entry points over a wide area at a remarkably low cost. Call your local dealer or a Cellgate security specialist today to learn more about how a new OmniPoint installation can improve your property's security.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what is OmniPoint? It can control up to 100 entry points per gateway. Multiple gateways can be installed for capacity. So let's say you have a property that is, you've got hills, or you have something that interferes with the RF signal. You can put multiple gateways up, and you don't have to worry about pairing a specific gateway with a specific EPM. They will automatically pair based on the signal strength, basically. It's not exactly that, but it's basically that. And we say it's up to a half-mile range. We are actually getting range as much as 1 mile, depending on topography. In some cases shorter, but I'll show you the way to determine exactly what the range is. And it's really astounding. No line of sight is required. Excellent building penetration. So this is operating in the 900 megahertz range for you techies that understand these kind of things. So high frequency signals tend to bounce. They don't penetrate. It's a low frequency that penetrates buildings. It's kind of like the guy that pulls up to the stoplight 3 cars behind you, and he's got one of those really loud speaker systems, and you can just feel the bass coming through your car. That's low frequency. Low frequency can penetrate things. It's extremely reliable, and it's cloud-based because it works with the True Cloud portal. In fact, each entry point is just like any other entry point on our system. And that's really one of the amazing parts, because you can have a blend of Watchman, of OmniPoints, and it just is all seamless. It looks just like another access control point. So it's completely compatible, the same portal, same user interface, the same credentials, everything. You just mix and match as you want. So I've got a couple of different illustrations to show what the architecture looks like. So the gateway communicates with our True Cloud portal, either using LTE or hardwired Ethernet, same kind of thing as the Watchman. But then it's communicating using a protocol called LoRa, or LoRaWAN to be more precise, with the devices that are installed at the doors. And this is point to multi-point, which is, an unusual thing, because so many of the technologies used in access control are point to point, but this is point to multi-point. So here is actually a property that we installed in St. Louis. It's a 200-unit apartment complex designed like most apartments are now, in that they have interior hallways. So you have some entry points from the exterior into the secure part of the building. What made this particularly difficult, and I was both excited and nervous about this, is they have a 4-story parking garage that's not secure. So what they do have is 3 entry points from the parking area into the residential area on each floor. So there's one here, there's one over here, and there's one down here. So every floor has those 3 entrances. So RF trying to penetrate concrete with steel rebar, it's not an easy task. And especially 3 floors of concrete having to penetrate that. Then, so that means 12, 3 times 4 is 12. And then there were 10 other entry points at different places around the property, 1 going to a dog park. We had 2 going to pool gates. So again, wireless was really beneficial. At this property, they also have 2 WXLs, one right here and one that you wouldn't be able to see, but it's on the side of this building. So it's a perfect blend of WXLs and OmniPoints. We were able to communicate with every one of these entry point modules with a single gateway installed up here. This is 440 feet across. So, it's a pretty decent distance, but again, the most challenging part of it was trying to penetrate 4 layers of concrete with 3 doors on each one. And then also having to get the perimeter entrances as well. So here's another illustration. This one, I want to focus more on the door because you still have the gateway communicating with TrueCloud and then using LoRa to communicate with the EPMs. But what hadn't been explained is how it works at the door. So the EPM is here and you've got a power supply. So you've got, in this case, I'm using an example of a strike lock. It could be a mag lock or whatever. So whatever power, so strike locks work on 12 volts DC or 24 volts AC. So our unit can do the same thing. It'll work on either 24 volts AC or 12 volts DC. But Wiegand works on 12 volt DC. So whatever the power coming into the unit, the output for the Wiegand will be 12 volts DC. We have 2 relays. We have a wet relay to pass through power to the strike lock. Both relays have normally open or normally closed settings on them. And it will pass through whatever the incoming voltage is. So you've got to match your power supply to the strike lock. That's all you have to worry about. If it has 2 digital inputs, so one can be connected to a door position sensor, so you know if the door is open or closed, and the other to a REX, request to exit button. So the only wiring that you have to do is at the door itself. No long distance data wires, no Ethernet, no Wiegand wires other than just right here. So the installation is extremely simple.
So at an access control site, oftentimes you'll also have some kind of a CCTV camera or some kind of video there also, either at the gate or at a door like this. Does OmniPoint support that in any way?
No, OmniPoint is a very, very, very low bandwidth protocol. So it's only for access control. So it's really not the CCTV integration. We wouldn't be able to get the range and the building penetration and everything if we tried to have the bandwidth that could support CCTV. So here's the gateway. The gateway, as we mentioned, we can do LTE or hardwired internet. We do provide a 12 volt transformer. So you probably have to have AC power and then run 12 volts out to the gateway. It also works on PoE. So if you're using the hardwired Ethernet and you have PoE through there, it will run on PoE. What we have shown here is our 5.8 dB LoRa antenna. That's our standard antenna. We do have a couple of other options that I'll talk about in a minute. And we also send a lightning arrestor. It's just a little bitty small unit right there that goes between the antenna and the gateway unit. That has to be grounded, really important. So if this does take a lightning hit, then the lightning arrestor should be the one that fails and you won't fry the unit. And you'll know that it's failed because you won't be getting communications between the portal and the doors. We have 2 LTE antennas, assuming you're using LTE version. They're not these black paddle ones. We're actually shipping with white fiberglass that look just like this, that they're 3 dB gain. And all of these have N-type antenna connectors. So if you're familiar with those, they're very sturdy industrial type antenna connectors. And the hardware mounting hardware that comes with it can be connected to a pole or to a flat surface. What we did here was use a satellite dish connector. So it was mounted to the side of the building, and then it had, a curved shape and a vertical pole. And then we used our mounting hardware to mount the gateway to the pole there. So all you had to have was power and the grounding for the antenna. That's it. So now the entry point modules themselves. We have 2 different versions. We have one with an internal antenna and then one with an external antenna. And in a demonstration in a minute, you'll see the benefits of those. It'll work with any 26-bit Wiegand device. Again, it works with 12 or 24 volts. It's a standard double gang size. We wanted to make it as easy and convenient to install as possible. But they are smart devices. They can store up to 10,000 credentials and 10,000 events should there be a disruption of the communication between the EPMs and our portal. So this is where those are stored, not the gateway. They're stored actually at the entry point. I've already talked about the relays and the inputs. So here's how since LoRa is a very low bandwidth protocol, it would really be challenging and time consuming to try to download the entire database in every single unit on the property. So what we do is we build the database of an entry point. So the first time you scan a card, it will take about 4 to 5 seconds because it phones home, gets the validation, and the validation says, yes, this person is okay. And by the way, store their credential. So each time a person uses an entry point for the first time, it takes 4 to 5 seconds. And after that, it's instant, it's instantaneous. And the EPM buffers the communications back to the portal. So, kind of a clever way to live with the limited bandwidth and still give it, huge capabilities. I mean, what percentage of the people use the clubhouse or workout room or the pool? So we're not having to update, and then you have updates. So what if somebody moves out, new person moves in? If we were updating that database, all the databases of every one of those devices, it would take a lot of bandwidth. Now we can do that with LTE, but LoRa again is a very, very low bandwidth. But this is a way to try to show you what the signal is like in a real world commercial environment. So I think you'll get the point here.
Hi, I'm Noel Gouldin, president of Cellgate. I'm here to show you how our new OmniPoint LoRa wireless access control system works. These are the EPMs that are installed at the entry point. This one has a small internal antenna. This is totally waterproof. And this one has an external antenna. Now, the devices that you will receive don't have these boxes. We just have it here, make it easier to carry. So these are communicating using LoRa with the gateway that is then connected to our servers by LTE. So LoRa makes it the long range access control. The gateway is actually 20 feet up, so it'd be like on the top of a building, and it communicates from there. Okay, so here we are at the corner on the intersection, and we're actually 311 feet from the gateway. So it's a pretty good distance. The internal antenna is blinking 3 times, and the external antenna is blinking 4 times. So great signal strength here. So we're at stop number 2. We're at 533 feet. And the internal antenna is still blinking 3 bars, and the external antenna is still blinking 4 bars. Now we're going to walk on up close to that building on the back side. These are the tilt wall, concrete, steel rebar enforced building. So we're going to walk that way. Okay. So now we're about 33 feet from the edge of the building, and the internal antenna is blinking 2 bars, and the external antenna is still blinking 4. So this kind of environment, it really shows the benefit of an external antenna. We just went right up next to the building because that's where you would really be installing this anyway. And so the internal antenna is 2 blinks and the external antenna is 3 blinks. So we're 533 feet away on the edge of a tilt wall building, shooting through the tilt wall building to the gateway. So now we're 673 feet away. And we've got sometimes 2, sometimes 3. So I don't know exactly what the dB cutoff is for 2 and 3, but we're just right hovering in there for this one. And this one is 4 blinks. So external antenna still really, really solid. And even though, we're going lower in blinks, that doesn't have anything to do really with the reliability of the signal. Signal's getting there because this is blinking. It means the data is getting through. Okay, now I'm at the second building, and it's got this overhang, and I'm right up next to it, so it would really be like being next to the building. This one has 2 bars. This one has 2 blinks. This one has 3 blinks. But I'm going to go ahead and back up and get underneath this overhang, and let's see how they perform. Okay, so now about 5 feet under this overhang. So we got a concrete on top of us, and at 673 feet. This one has 1 blink. This one has 3. So it's really showing the significance of this external antenna. So if I was installing here, it would definitely be a preference to use an external antenna. Okay, so now we're 870 feet from the gateway. This one, internal antenna, has 2 blinks, and the external antenna has 3 blinks. So we're still kind of in the open. Now we're going to go behind that building. Okay, so now we're 870 feet, but about 30 feet in from the side of the concrete building. And so this internal antenna is having a hard time staying connected, does reboot and reconnects, but it's blinking 1 bar, 1 blink, and then it'll wait a little while, it'll reboot. So it does come back online. This one has a solid 2 blinks to it. So the internal antenna does have some directionality to it just because of the physics of the antenna itself, where this one is not only higher gain, but it's also getting more of the bounce of the signal from other things around it, whether it's buildings or trees or whatever. Now, you could, if you want, put an antenna that could want an EPM, up on a roof or somewhere else, and then run the wires. It's still not a long run, but you certainly can do that. They are weatherproof. And this shows you the power of the LoRa technology, the range, the building penetration, the way the signals can bounce around, and we can get access control 870 feet, totally wireless.
But the reality is, those were 3 concrete buildings where the signal's having to go in and out, in and out, in and out. It's really a worst case kind of a scenario. And we have actually tested it up to a mile once in a residential area and once in an industrial. Actually, John Boyd was in California last week, and he was on a rendering. He was at a rendering plant, and so they had I don't know, a big building there, and he was up at the very top of that. It was like 85 feet up, and had the EPM up there. I'm sorry, the gateway up there. And he was getting close to a mile range with that. And it was even penetrating the steel buildings. He had coverage inside. The coverage is really amazing, but it is going to depend. If you've got hills, it's not going to go through hills. So, but worst case scenario, you add another gateway, and it is self-healing. It'll self-manage, so you don't have to worry about that. But the real answer is testing it. We do have this test kit. It's available today. We are publishing. We have it developed, and we're communicating it out. The exact same type of demo kit program we have for the Watchman, meaning that a dealer, system integrator, you guys can have some loaner kits or whatever, but if a dealer has it, then as they sell these units, they can recoup their investment and then recover the total cost by a rebate for each sale. It's a Pelican case, really high grade case. We provide the LTE version of the gateway and a 110, the transformer, so you would need 110 power wherever the gateway is going to be. We provide different LoRa antennas, the 5.8 dB, which is our standard. We also provide an 8 dB gain. So if signal is becoming an issue, you can increase to the 8 dB gain antenna, and then a shorter 3 dB gain antenna. The signal, the shape of the signal is a little bit different. It's more round, where the higher the gain antenna, the more conical shape it is. So they concentrate the signal in kind of a cone that goes out. So we do provide 3 different antennas. We also provide a tripod that goes up to 13 feet in height. So, you know, if you can't get up on top of a building, you just want to test at different heights, that tripod goes up to 13 feet. We do provide 2 EPMs, both the internal and the external versions, and 2 lithium-ion batteries, so you can carry the EPMs like I did on that walk demonstration. And as I mentioned, we have it developed, and we're in the process of communicating it out, this demo kit program. And it really is the best way. And I'll tell you, the dealers that have worked with us on the test sites have been just totally blown away by it. Pricing, I know this is important to everybody. So the gateway has an MSRP of $3,000, and the service fee for the gateway is $50 per month on LTE, $37.50 with hardwired internet. So it's the same kind of a structure that we have with the Watchman. Now the EPMs are $500 regardless of whether it's internal or external antenna, and $3 per month per EPM. So let's go back to that apartment complex. They had 22 EPMs. So that's 22 times 3, or $66 plus the $50 for the gateway. They had access control to all those different entry points for $116 a month. They did have two, or they do have two WXLs. So their total monthly bill for 275 residents, something like that, is $400 per month for the two XLs and the OmniPoint. But the OmniPoint part was only $116 per month. Wiring that property would have been just almost impossible. It would have been extremely difficult with the different floors that you have on the for the parking garage. The building itself was, you know, you had these long hallways. I can't even imagine what the capital cost would be for trying to wire that building. And as a result, what they were using, what we replaced was just a keypad with a local code. So everybody used the exact same code to enter every one of those doors. Not a very secure solution. So the installation sales process. So obviously the system integrator, the dealer needs to walk the site, but they need to pay real close attention to the details. They need to not only just identify the entrances, but also evaluate any installation options. Is it going to be a flush mount, surface mount, up above the crawl space? We have one apartment complex in Reno where they installed the EPMs above the crawl space. So totally hidden there, but easily accessible. Do they currently have any access control methods? So the apartment complex in Reno, they were using lock and keys for the same kind of thing, for common area entrance from the outside. And so they didn't have strike locks, they didn't have power, and they didn't have Wiegand. So they had to run that infrastructure. They had to get power, which was a lot easier than trying to get data wires, but they had to wire the strike locks and the Wiegand devices. So all those need to be, the installer really needs to pay attention to all of those details. We want to provide as much help as we can. So here's what we ask people to do. Go to Google Earth, or you can download Google Earth Pro onto your computer, and that's my favorite. It's super powerful, and you can get great different views of a property. Find the location, zoom in so you've got a good tight shot of it, and then just drop pins wherever the entrances are and name them. So then you save it as a PDF and email it to John with the physical address, the property name, and the contact information of the dealer. So that way John can look up the address, use some of these other tools, look at it and get a good feel for what those issues are going to be and where the best possible locations for the gateway are. The gateway location is really, really key to success of the project. And if the range is a concern, a signal test, just like we were talking about. It literally took me 5 minutes to do this. This is, obviously a school. I zoomed in, I dropped some pins, and I named them and saved it as a PDF. So in 5 minutes, it would be impossible to kind of describe what that would be like. And so if that was emailed to John, he could very easily say, okay, one gateway is going to be fine. You've got these different options. This would be a very simple, really easy installation. By the way, that apartment complex took less than a day and a half to install all those 22 entry points. Really amazingly efficient. So here is that same apartment, and this is using Google Earth Pro. We spent a little bit more time on this one. If you noticed on the earlier slide, I had a better view of the parking garage because you can change the angle with Google Earth Pro. But the same kind of thing applies. So If you send this to John with the physical address, he's able to look at it. And actually, when we first saw this property, we identified maybe 2 or 3 different potential locations for the gateway, and they did an actual signal test at the site and determined that this high point was the best one. So that's where it was installed. The installation steps. So this is, I think you'll really, really like this, because how you install it and configure it is really important. And we made it extremely easy. So on the portal, on the TrueCloud portal, you actually create the account and create the property. So let's say there's 4 buildings and each building has 4 doors. Well, you create that in the portal. So you are identifying the installation locations, at least by name. At the property, you install the gateway and power it up, because it needs to be powered up so when you power up the EPMs can register with the gateway. So we have a new smartphone app that will be released in a couple of weeks whenever Apple gets through testing it. And it's not the user app, this is for installers. So what the installer would do is they would pull up the property on the app and they go to building 1, door 1. And it doesn't matter which EPM. So the EPMs are not pre-configured with an installation location or a certain gateway. Just pick an EPM up out of the pile. There's a QR code on it. So the installer selects the building and the entry point and then scans a QR code. It's that simple. Now, the device, all the device identity has been created in the portal. It's just really that simple. If it's an external antenna version, you need to connect the external antenna first before you power it on. That way, the radio sees the antenna. Otherwise, you're going to have to power cycle it. Then all you have to do is wire the EPM, the lock, the Wiegand, all those kind of things. And the installer app also has test scenarios. So before leaving that installation location, you can run through a whole series of tests with a Wiegand credential, see if the door status changed, send an open command to make sure that it opens from the portal. You can go through a whole series of test steps using the installer app. So we've really made this as simple as possible in all ways. I mean, if you're installing a control panel, not only do you have to have those wires run all the way back to the control panel, you got to figure out if you've got the right wires connected to the right port on the control panel. And, it's just a nightmare. So this avoids all of that.
And just to clarify real quick on that. So if you're using like a Watchman product, a 480 for, let's just say, that's just adding into the cloud. You wouldn't be tying a Watchman into a, one of your modules, correct?
That's correct. The Watchman is it's its own product, and we have the expansion boards on the XL, and then the OmniPoint. On the user interface, the OmniPoint, it's just the EPMs really that a property manager is going to see. It's just those entry points, and they treat them like any other entry point. They can say, this credential is valid at this entry point at this time. It works just like any other entry point. So kind of in summary, no long distance data wires. I mean, that's really the selling point to this. No control panels, because even with that besides the data wires, you got to have the cost and all of the hassle of installing the control panels. No internet required. So even so, if you've got separate buildings, you not only have to have, in a traditional sense, you would have control panels and data wires, but you have to have internet at each one of those buildings. And that by itself comes with a high cost. There's no internet required. It's a huge CapEx savings. It's a huge labor savings. And in fact, that's probably one of the biggest driving factors. Everybody knows how hard it is to get good people, have them trained and be very competent. You want to use your people where it's the best return on that investment. Pulling wires is not a good use, not a good ROI on that. Nobody makes much money pulling cables. It's a very time-consuming process, and move on to the projects where you can make more money, and that's with access control, not with the infrastructure. So we're taking the need for the infrastructure out of it.
It seems also that the administration of this system is pretty damn simple too. Noel, is that not true?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Our TrueCloud portal is a very powerful, simple tool to use, and managing these things is extremely simple. And we're using multi-tenant as kind of the example here, largely because we've been focusing on multi-tenant, and our distribution channel deals a lot with multi-tenant. But as I mentioned, John was at a rendering plant. I would not have thought a rendering plant would be a good market for this. Trucking yards, warehouses, any place that has access control needs where the entry points are it's spread apart. It's just that easy. You just simply get the gateway up and put your EPMs where they need to be. When we first were thinking about this solution, our expectation was that people wanted the watchman, and they then needed access control on these other parts of the property, and they wanted to use one system to manage it. So we thought that watchman was the driving factor and that OmniPoint was the secondary. And what we've learned in working with a number of properties now is it's exact opposite, because OmniPoint is being driven by cost and labor savings. It's just so much easier and less expensive. So you can lead with OmniPoint, and then they need a telephone entry, visitor management, all those things. And that's where the watchman comes in. So you lead with OmniPoint, and then you get the telephone entry and all the rest of the business. And the beauty is there is no competition. There is nothing out there. If you're aware of something that even comes close to this, let me know, because I'm not aware of anything that can even touch it. So trust me, we are going to be moving a lot into system integrators and other channels, but you guys have a head start because we're not there yet. So your customer base, if you want to really expand your customers' business in the system integrator field, this is the easiest way to do it. So I'm not sure if it's really good for a hotel, maybe cabins where you have multiple cabins on a property. That might be a good place. I'll tell you, universities, parking, parking has the same spreading problem. A parking garage, a hospital parking area. You've got huge areas to try to cover, and this can handle that really, really well. this, I want to show y'all, this is the actual EPM. This is what you would get. And then the one with the external antenna has a bulkhead connector here. And we give you a pigtail with another bulkhead that you could put in like a Cantex box, and it would look like this. But as we've talked about, it works with the Watchman. Same credential that you would use for the for an OmniPoint, the exact same credential can be used. Actually, it's not going to like this one, but the same credentials be used for both systems. This is the gateway. So it's a nice size. So these are the antenna connectors, one for LoRa, two for LTE, and they're those N-style connectors. This isn't the actual power connector, but we have a marine grade connector for the power, which is just really, really exceptional. The portal, and in fact, if you're using it for inside of a building, you absolutely can have the gateway inside. And if your range is not very far outside of the building, you can have the gateway inside. In fact, we have a gateway inside our server room here at the office that we use. So in the portal, it's okay. Here's an EPM with and then here's the Watchman. So they're just so I can trigger the EPM, and there it is. It's I can refresh the browser and it'll come up, and then I can trigger the Watchman.
Access granted.
Access granted. And then there's the Watchman. So again, it is just totally blended in with every other device. Now, what we have done is we took the relay on the EPM and we wired it to a digital input. So when the relay triggered it to the device, it looked like the gate and the door opened, and then when the relay released, it looked like the door closed. So, but it is all one system. You just don't see cameras here for the obvious reason, but you can still do schedules. You can do all of the things that you can do with the Cellgate system. You can do with an OmniPoint, just like any other entry point. And one other thing, under the new product development category, our highest priority this year is to be integrating our portal with property management software and enterprise level access control software. So we have already started with 2 companies, and as we get entrees to other companies, we will be adding a whole bunch of companies where we integrate our portal with other companies' software. So that's my #1 priority for this year.
Question would be, in retrofits, where might somebody be considering OmniPoint on a system that already has some access control devices installed?
Yep. So we have one location that had 4, and they just put the EPMs literally next to the control panel and just took advantage of the wires that were already pulled with the control panel. I don't think I would want a lot of those in the same room, because you can get some interference, although these devices are doing frequency hopping, so to try to minimize any of that. But the more you put in there, the more likelihood that's going to be. But you can take advantage of existing wires for Wiegand, strike lock, door position, and whether you do that at the door or at some centralized place is really up to you. But how reliable are the wires? How old are they? Do you think that they're going to be getting corroded, or, what kind of maintenance might you have on those wires? All those are variables, but we do have one instance where they actually put 4 in this literally right next to the control panel, and they just took the wires from the control panel and hooked it up into the EPMs.
Perfect.
So one thing I do want to say that I think is really, it's anecdotal but really telling. The handful of dealers that we worked with on our test properties, every single one of them, well, first of all, they were just absolutely amazed at how simple and reliable, how easy and short amount of time it took to install them. Every single one of them said, oh my God, I've got 5 other places that I want to do this. And every single one of them, we've got additional quotes out there for other properties. So the key is to get that first domino to fall, meaning a system integrator or a dealer, get them to put it on one property. And I guarantee you they will do more and more and more. So you got to get that domino chain started, and then get this domino chain started, because it absolutely will sell itself by the savings.